Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Dom and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be showing you how to use HTML, CSS and JavaScript to create your very own custom color picker. It's going to be this one right here. As we can see, we're able to save colors and it's going to come back when the page refreshes. And I'm also going to be showing you how to then publish your application or your project to the internet using a great web hosting service called Hostinger. So as we can see here, the application is fairly straightforward. We can drag around and we can preview the color which we selected. I've also got this right side to, change the primary color. And we're also able to save colors by simply middle clicking on one of your save slots right there. And if I was to refresh the page, it's gonna, of course, retain those saved colors. So this right here is gonna work using local storage. So if you haven't used local storage before, this right here should be a pretty good learning experience. And as we can see, it's currently hosted on my domain here, decodeproject.online. And this is of course done using Hostinger, which like I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna be showing you how to do that very shortly. Now, in order to get the color picker on the left side here, we're going to be using a library called ColorJoe. I'm going to be linking this down below along with the source code for today's project, but this library right here is really good because it's really simple to use and it gives you a nice clean color picker. So of course, the stuff on the right side is going to be what we're going to be adding in, but of course this actual widget here on the left side is, comes from that library. So it's a great library and we're going to be learning how to use it. It's also a good opportunity for someone who hasn't used libraries before to see how, their APIs typically work, the events and things like that. And it should hopefully give you a better understanding of how you might use a future library. All right, so now we're going to head inside this tab right here and begin from scratch to create what I just showed you. All right, so going inside the text editor, I've got this empty index HTML with no linked up style sheets or JavaScript. All right. The first step is going to be to include the ColorJoe library so we can begin using it straight away. All right. So going inside the directory structure, let's make a new folder called ColorJoe. And then we're going to go inside the GitHub repository, which of course is linked down below, and just go inside the dist directory. And then you can go ahead and you can simply copy the colorjoe.min.js. And when I say copy, I mean go into it just like this, and then copy the raw contents. All right. Now going inside the text editor, we can simply make a new file called colorjoe.min.js inside there. All right. We can now simply paste the source code for ColorJoe and we have included the JavaScript. There's also going to be some CSS that goes along with ColorJoe. So to achieve, or not to achieve, but to grab the CSS, going back inside the GitHub repository, we can simply go back and head inside the CSS directory and we can copy once again the contents of this colorjoe.css. So copy this right here, go back in the text editor and simply create that new file and we'll say colorjoe.css. And we're now good to go. And we can now include these two files inside the head of the HTML. All right, so let's drop down here and we're going to say link for a CSS file going to, of course, ColorJoe and then colorjoe.css and then a JavaScript file right here. Of course, going to ColorJoe and then, of course, colorjoe.min.js. All right, so we now have the ColorJoe library installed on the web page. So going inside the browser, we're of course going to get nothing just yet, but we can now start using that library, which we're going to get to very shortly. Now, before continuing on with the project, I just want to talk to you a bit more about Hostinger and how we can publish the current index HTML to your website if you choose to go down this path. Hostinger is the sponsor for today's video, and it's an awesome web hosting service which allows you to easily get your websites, projects, or portfolios live on the internet. And if you've never hosted a website before, I recommend the Hostinger Premium Shared Hosting Plan because it's great value for money, and it even includes a free domain and SSL. One thing I love about Hostinger is their 99.9% uptime guarantee, which means you never need to worry about your website going down. And of course, their awesome control panel, which is called hPanel, and it's honestly one of the nicest user interfaces I've ever used. On top of that, you get 24/7, 365 chat support, and you can really tell that Hostinger has a great relationship with their customers. All right, so once you've clicked on the link in the description below, hostinger.com/decode, you're going to be taken to this page right here. Now, if you want to use the same awesome web hosting service that I'm using in today's video, you can head to the hosting section right up here and then go inside web hosting, all right? From here, if we scroll down, you're going to see this popular premium shared hosting plan. So I think this plan right here is perfect for developers like yourself and I, as it allows you to easily publish your own website, project, or portfolio to the internet. And it also includes a free domain and SSL, which of course is a very nice bonus. All right, so selecting this plan right here, I'm going to be taken to this page. Now, I'm going to choose the 48-month plan right here, as it's the most value for money, and then hop down to the bottom section here. Now you can easily enter the decode coupon code right here, just like this, then press plus, and it's going to go from 184.27 to just 171.07, and now you can simply proceed with your payment. Okay, so we're going to do a quick test run and publish our current index HTML to our live website. All right, so going back inside the text editor, I'm going to simply say something like color picker test inside the HTML. So if I was to now refresh my local environment, we get this right here. And of course, now we actually want to see this on our live website. Okay, so going inside the Hostinger control panel here, it's called hPanel. We can simply go up into the hosting section right up here, and I can manage my decode project domain. Going inside here, I'm inside the control panel for my particular domain or website. I can now scroll down and I can find the files section right here. So going inside the file manager, we can now proceed to upload some files. Now, you can also use things like Git or even FTP to publish files, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to be showing you how to do it using the file manager. All right, so we can see here, I've got this public HTML directory. So of course, all of your public facing HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all of that is going to go inside your public HTML directory. All right, so we can see here, I've got an existing folder called Color Picker Demo, and this one right here is simply referring to the original example which I showed you. So we're going to be creating a new folder inside here called color-picker. So up here, I'll say new folder, and I'll call this color-picker like I just mentioned, and we can create that one right there. And now, if I go to my website, decodeproject.online, then I just simply go to color-picker, we can see we get this right here, an empty directory listing, which means we can now upload that index HTML. So going back inside here, let's just go inside the color picker directory, and now we're going to simply drag and drop our source code. So going inside our file explorer, I'll just copy all of our, ColorJoe and index HTML and drag it inside here. And now I can press upload and we're basically done. So we're going to be repeating this step right here at the end of the video to publish our final changes. And as we can see now, on a refresh of the live website, we get this right here. So now everything's working. We can continue on with the development on the local server. Okay, so the first step now is going to be to go back inside here, and we're going to be starting in the HTML before moving on to the CSS, then lastly the JavaScript. All right, so when it comes to the HTML, we're going to need to create a container for both the ColorJoe widget and of course our right side with the save colors and things like that. So So let's make a new div called container right here, and then drop down here, make a new div with a class of ColorJoe. So this one right here is going to be the ColorJoe widget container, I guess. So we got this inside this container. All right. Now, dropping down here, we can make a new div with a class of config, and this right here is going to be our right side panel containing, like I said earlier, our saved colors and our selected color. All right. So inside the config, I can make a new div with a class of config-title, and I can just say something like selected color as the title for the next one, which is going to be a container which tells me what the hex code is for this currently selected color. So new div with a class of selected-color-text, and we're going to default this to be the decode green color 009578. We're going to now make another div, this time a class of simply just selected-color and nothing inside here. So this div is going to be the placeholder which displays the active color, that little rectangle, of course, that gets updated as we go. All right. I can save this and go back in the browser, do a refresh, and we get this right here. So of course we can now move on to essentially just creating some divs for our saved colors. So we're going to have 5 colors to be saved. All right. So let's make a new title here. And we can just say saved colors just like this. And then we're going to simply drop down here and make 5 divs with a class of saved-color. I can do Shift-Alt down to make 5 more, 4 more, and we're good to go. So this right here is all we need for the HTML when it comes to this color picker. Back in the browser, and we get this right here. So now let's use some CSS to make all of this look a lot nicer. But first, I just want to initialize ColorJoe. That way we can actually see the widget working. Okay, so going back inside here, let's head down to the JavaScript right at the end of our body here, and we're going to simply say this. All right, we're going to say const cj, short for ColorJoe, is equal to colorjoe.rgb. We're then going to be passing through here the element as the container. So basically, I want to pass through this div right here into this function. So we're going to use document.querySelector. I might just minimize the sidebar here. So we'll say query selector, then passing through here the first element with a class of ColorJoe. Of course, that one refers to our div right up here. I'm now just going to say cj.show. I'll save this, go back in the browser, and we get this right here. So basically, we've just confirmed that our ColorJoe is actually working. So now it's going to be up to us to make this look a lot nicer than it currently does. All right. And I'm referring to our stuff right down here because this looks amazing. But moving forward, let's go up inside the CSS, make a new style tag in the head, and we can move on. So the first one here is going to be targeting the body, and we're going to be giving this a background of a very light gray. It's going to be EEE just like this, as well as a margin of 20 pixels around all of the sides. Okay. Then go back in the browser and we get this right here. Not much of a change. Going back inside the text editor, let's now override some of the default styles provided to us by the ColorJoe library. So we can just say here, color picker. So targeting a class. So this color picker class isn't on the HTML here, but ColorJoe is going to be adding it for us. All right. So if I go back in the browser, we can see if I inspect this, this div right here, we get this color picker class on, of course, that container right there. So for this one, we're going to be saying a background of none, just to remove that default background, a border of none, and a margin of 0. So this right here is going to make the color picker fit nicely into our own design. Save this, go back in the browser, refresh, and we get this right here. The next thing to change is it's going to be just to simply remove some of this default margining on the right side here. So going back inside here, We can target color picker, and we can target the 1D class. This refers to the bar on the right side. Like I said, just removing that default margin right. So we can just say a margin right of 0 for that one right there. And now we can finally move on to actually styling up our own elements here, selected colors and the saved colors. All right, so going back inside the CSS, let's apply some styles to the main container for the entire thing. So for this one, we're going to be using firstly a display of flex. This right here going to give us the 2-column layout. So if I save this, go back in the browser, refresh, and we get this right here. So we've got the layout correct. So now we can move forward and we can simply apply a width here of something like 500 pixels and a padding of 20 pixels. Save this back in the browser and we get this right here. We can now just apply some more stylistic stuff to this. So we can just say a background of white, a border radius of 5 pixels, and lastly a box shadow here of 0, 0, 10 pixels, and RGBA 0, 0, 0, and then 0.15 for 15% opaque black box shadow. Save this back in the browser, refresh, and we get this right here. So of course, looking not too bad so far, but now of course, we're going to be styling up the config on the right side, all right? When it comes to our config here, we're going to be targeting the class of config. So for this one, going to give this a flex grow of 1 to ensure that essentially once the ColorJoe on the left has, consumed the amount of space it wants to, a flex grow of 1 for the config is going to make it so it takes up the remaining space. If I refresh, we can see now it takes up the entire width of what's available right there. So moving forward, we can also provide a margin left of 20 pixels matching the padding right up here to give us a nice margin. Save this back in the browser and we get this right here. We can now style up the selected color and the saved colors titles. Okay, so for this one, we can just say config-title with the text align of center, a padding of 15px top and bottom, and 0 for left and right, and a font family of sans serif alongside a font weight of bold. Save this back in the browser and we get this right here. Cool. We can now style up this text right here. So for this, I want to be using monospace to give us that, code kind of look. So going back inside here, we're going to be targeting the selected color-text class. And for this one, we can just give it a text align also of center, a font family of monospace, a font size of 1.2 EM, and then a margin bottom here of 15 pixels. Save this back in the browser and we get this right here. So of course, looking not too bad so far, but we can move forward with styling up now the selected color and the saved colors. So those colorful rectangle divs to show us, the saved colors or the selected color. So for this, let's target both the selected color and the saved color classes. So for these two, we're going to give it a height of 15 pixels as well as a border of 1px solid and then triple E for a light gray. The user is also going to be able to click on these colors. So we'll give it a cursor of pointer to essentially inform the user that yes, you can actually click on these divs. And lastly, just a border radius here of 3 pixels. Save this back in the browser and we get this right here. Okay, so of course we now have our colors appearing. The last step is going to be to create some space between those colors. So going back inside here, we can now just target the saved color class. Then we'll say, let me select every single saved color that is not the last one. So not the last of type. And for these ones, going to give this a margin bottom of 5 pixels. Save this back in the browser and we are now done with the CSS. We have some space between our saved colors right down here. So now we can move forward with the JavaScript. All right, so going back inside the text editor, we can hop down inside the script tag and we can actually comment out our existing ColorJoe code because we're going to be using JavaScript classes instead to contain everything. All right, so up here, we can make a new class called ColorPicker. All right, so this class is going to, like I just mentioned, encapsulate all of our code to make it, separate and contained within this single area. All right, so inside here, we can define a constructor, and this constructor is going to take through a root element. Now, if you're new to JavaScript classes, I've got a whole video dedicated to that if you're interested. But basically right here in the constructor, this root refers to, or is going to refer to, our div right here with a class of container, basically just our root element for the entire HTML. So we're going to pass through all of this stuff here and say, look, JavaScript, latch onto this HTML and actually make it work. All right, so passing in that right there. Now I'm also going to be going ahead and just keeping a reference to that root element. So we'll say this dot root is going to be equal to root just like that. All right. Now we can also go ahead and create the instance of the ColorJoe and then show it inside here. So we'll say this dot ColorJoe is equal to ColorJoe.rgb once again. So now it's going to be asking for the same thing, the ColorJoe class. So this one right here, but we're going to be providing it this time using the container. So we'll say this dot root dot query selector, then pass through here the same thing, a class of ColorJoe. So it's still going to be referring to our div here, but this time we know for sure it's going to be this one and not a different one somewhere else on the web page. Okay, cool. So now we can simply show that widget once again. So we'll say this dot ColorJoe dot show just like that. I can now remove this commented out code and we can instead create a new instance of our own ColorPicker class right here. So we'll say const ColorPicker just like this, or even just something like CP is going to be fine. So CP is equal to a new instance of the ColorPicker passing through here the container. So we'll say document.querySelector passing through here the class of container. I can now say well, that's it actually. So let me just save this, go back in the browser, do a refresh, and now inside the console, we can see actually nothing has changed here, but in the console, if I log out the value of CP, we get this right here, of course, the instance of our ColorPicker class. All right, so I'll just remove this warning real quick, and there we go. Oops, maybe not. There we go. Let's just put it back. That's okay. We can live with that. But cool. So moving forward now, we have this instance. So we can see our root has been populated with our container. So we can move on to some more things inside this constructor. So we can define a couple of properties here. The first one is going to be this dot selected color is equal to null. So this right here is going to simply hold a reference to whatever color the user has currently got selected. All right. We can also say this dot saved colors is equal to, then we can say this dot get saved colors. So we're going to now define this method called getSavedColors, and basically it's going to go to local storage and it's going to try to, it is going to fetch our saved colors. Okay, so for this one, let's drop down here and create this method. So we can say getSavedColors, and inside here, we're going to simply return an array of 5 elements. It's going to be, let's just do white. Okay, and just do this 4 more times. So of course, giving us our 5 selected colors now, or our 5 saved colors. Now, obviously, this right here does not currently go to local storage, but later on, we're going to be altering this function so it does go to local storage and fetch the actual saved colors. But for now, they're all going to be a white. All right. Now we may choose to mix it up. I might just go inside here and just say something like 0000FF for the second color, giving us a blue, just to actually see this working visually in the browser. So now we have the saved colors set to this right here. If I save this, go back in the browser, refresh, we can see now the CP constant gives us this right here, and we have our saved colors assigned to our instance. All right. We can now move forward and we're going to be setting a default color when the page first loads up. So as I showed earlier, I've set the default in the text to be the dcode green color. So I'll just remove this from the div and we're going to be letting the JavaScript do that instead. All right, so dropping down here, we'll say this.setSelectedColor and passing through once again that dcode green. So this method now we're going to need to define. So for this one, we can drop down here and we'll say setSelectedColor. It's going to take through here the color and a second parameter called skipCJ_update with a default value of false. So I'm going to be talking about this optional parameter later on, but let's just keep it there for now. And inside here, we're going to simply, make our selected color visible and also save it in this property. So we'll say here, firstly, this.selectedColor is equal to the color which we pass in. I'm also going to say here, this.root.querySelector, we're going to be selecting the class called selected-color-text, of course, referring to our text right up here. And we're going to insert that hex code inside there, as I just showed you earlier with the default data. So we'll say .text content is equal to the color which gets passed in. The second query selector here is going to be for the selected color class. That's referring to our rectangle, which displays the current color. So for this one, we're going to say .style.background is equal to the color instead to apply that inline style. I can save this, go back in the browser, do a refresh, and we get this right here. As we can see, we have that hex code back in that div, and of course we get that green right there. So that is the setSelectedColor method implemented. Now, there is this parameter, like I said earlier, I'm going to be talking about it later on, but that is the basics for that method right there. Now, we're also going to say in the constructor, this.colorjoe.on, and now we're going to say here, because basically ColorJoe is going to expose a bunch of events for you to use. So one of the events is called change. So I'm going to pass change inside here. This is just saying, look, on change, or when the user changes the color, we're going to run this function. Now, this function is going to provide us with a value. I'm going to call this value color. But if I console.log what color is, save this, go back in the browser, do a refresh, I can now change the color. As we can see, every single little change I make is going to give me a console log in that function. So this object, this color, is details about the currently selected color. Now, we have a method here called hex. So if we call .hex on this object, we're going to grab the hex code for this color. So for this, we can now simply say this.setSelectedColor and pass through here that color. Save this, back in the browser, refresh. We can see we get that, which is not good. Let's go back inside here and change this to be .hex, like I mentioned earlier. So save this back in the browser, refresh, and we can see that color is going to change right here. And we're looking pretty good so far. There is one thing I forgot to mention here, and that is also going to be this second parameter. So we're going to say true. So maybe it's about time I talk about this parameter here. So basically, if our skip CJ update or skip ColorJoe update value is true, then we do not want to update or tell ColorJoe what the color should be. The reason is because this comes from ColorJoe. So ColorJoe is already on this color. So there's no point trying to set that color on the widget. The reason why you would want to do that is when you want to display a saved color. So if I go back in my example from earlier on, if I choose this red, it's going to update that. So there, the skip update was false. So to achieve that, let's go down here. I'll say if we do not want to skip the CG update, then we're going to do it. This is going to be simply this.colorjoe.set and pass through that color. All right. Now we're going to see this in action very shortly when we loop through our saved colors and get that displaying on the right side. So let's do that right now by going back in the constructor, and we'll say here this.root.query selector all. We're going to be selecting all of the saved color divs. So for this, we'll say a class of saved-color. And like I said, for each one of those, we're going to grab onto the element and its index. Okay. So for every one of those divs, we're going to say this. We'll say this.show saved color. Then we'll say EL. Then just do this.saved colors at index I. So this method right here is yet to be defined, but its purpose is to actually display, a color inside one of those elements. Just like we did down here with this background, I want to do it for those saved colors as well. So let's define this method right now. Dropping down here, we'll say show saved color, taking through, like it said right up here, the element and the index and the actual color, should I say. So we're going to take through the element right here and the color. And remember, guys, this EL or this element refers to one of these divs right here, one of these saved color divs. So for these, I'm going to simply say element.style.background is going to be equal to the color. And we're also going to remember what color we assigned it, or what color we assigned to that element by using HTML5 data attributes. So we'll say element.dataset.color is equal to color. So now let's see what this looks like in the browser. We have white, blue, and then 3 more white colors. So back inside here, refresh, and we get this. So we have, of course, the white and the blue, and we can see, of course, our colors are displaying correctly. So if I inspect the elements on one of these, so I'll go to the blue one, we have the data attribute right here with a value of that blue hex code. And of course, also the background color is being applied. So this data attribute is going to be useful for when we want to redisplay that color by selecting it right there. And speaking of that, let's do that right now. So going back in the text editor, inside our for each, we're going to add an event listener to our color or to our saved colors. So for this, we'll say el.addEventListener, and we'll say for this a mouse up. Okay, so when the user basically clicks on the element, so when their mouse goes up, we're going to run this event, and we're going to grab onto the event object because we're going to be using this event object very shortly for that middle click to save a color. But for now, let's just say inside here, this.set selected color, then say right here, el.dataset.color. So now, because we're not saying true to skip that update, we should see this color being displayed on the left side. Back in the browser, refresh, click on the saved color, and we get that right there. We get the update here, and we also get the ColorJoe update. If I say true inside this method call, try again, refresh, this time we only get it here and here, we don't get it on the right side. So make sure you have, of course, false provided to that method, and you should be good to go. All right, so now we're going to be having a look at obviously saving those colors. Okay, so in order to save a color to your list of 5 saved colors, we're going to do that when the user clicks with their middle scroll wheel. So for this, we're going to say if e.button is equal to 1, then that's going to be the save action, because this event object right here has a property called button. And if the button property is equal to 1, it means the user has chosen their middle mouse wheel. All right, it's going to be 0 for a regular left click or whichever direction you're using, and of course 1 for the middle mouse wheel. Cool. So speaking of that, we'll now say here, this.saveColor, and we're going to be saving the currently selected color. So we'll say this.selectedColor, then also pass through the index. So this method here is yet to be defined, but it's going to be saving our color to local storage. And the next one is going to be this.show saved color to, of course, display that new saved color, on the actual div itself. So we can pass through the element and the currently selected color. Save this back in the browser, do a refresh, and we're going to be now middle mouse clicking or scroll wheel clicking on the actual, color of blue here, and we get an error. Of course, save color isn't a function. So let me go back inside here, and I'm just going to let's define that method really quickly. So we can just do save color right here, taking through the color and the index, and we'll stop there, go back in the browser, refresh, and try again. Click on the blue with the mouse wheel, and we get that green right there. So of course, our show selected has gone through. Where is it? Right here, show saved color. But of course, the save is yet to work. So let's get that save working. So down inside the save color method, I'm going to simply say this.savedColors at index I is equal to the passed in color. So simply updating that value. In this case right here, if I go back inside here, if I refresh and I just, if I choose a red and I middle click or mouse wheel click on the blue, we get that right there. But now if I see what CP looks like, our instance, the selected or the saved colors now has that red at index 1. And that is what this line is doing. So now we're going to simply save this array to local storage. So down here, we'll say local storage.set item. Then we're going to be setting this against a key. The key is going to be called color picker-saved, and the value is going to be JSON.stringify. Then passing through here, this.savedColors. So I'm now going to show you what that looks like in the browser, in the local storage section. So going back inside the browser, do a refresh here. I'm going to be saving the green decode color at index 5 here, or at the last one. And let me just go back to the decode green color, try again. And we get that right there. So now if I go inside the application tab, inside local storage, we can see inside here we have 2 keys. So that's my mistake from earlier today. Let me get rid of this. This one is the key which you guys should also see in your browser. As we can see, index 0 is our, which one's that? Oh, my mistake, guys. Let me check this. I did the exact same thing. So with that last character. So color picker-saved. Let's try again. Let's clear our local storage, refresh, click on this, and now we get this right here. As we can see, we got all of our colors saved. We have the whites, we have the blue, and of course that recently selected dcode green color. So that is all working perfectly fine. It's now going to be a simple case of updating this get saved colors to return that array and not this, this one here. All right. So for that, it's going to be relatively straightforward. I'm going to make a new constant here called saved equal to json.parse, and then we're going to be parsing local storage.getItem, just like this. And we'll say here color picker, there we go, dash saved. All right. If it's the first time the user is using your color picker, we can say or and default to an empty array as JSON, just like that. So now if I console.log what the value of saved is, go back in the browser, refresh, we can see in the console we have this array right here of all of our colors coming from local storage. So now let's simply move this here into this here. It's going to be really easy, guys, but we do need to do a bit of array merging here to provide the defaults if the user is initially loading up your website for the first time. So for this, we'll say return a new array of 5 elements. Then we'll say .fill with the default color of white. Then we'll say .map. So we're saying here, look, let's loop through every single default white hex code and check if there is a corresponding value inside the saved array for that index. And if there is, we're going to use that one instead. So here, we'll grab onto the default color and its index. All right. Then we'll just say here, return saved at index I, or if there is no saved colors, then we can just say return the default color. So that's going to run 5 times for every single default white, and it's going to, of course, give us our saved colors array. Save this back in the browser, refresh, and now we can see we have the green appearing on the bottom here. If I choose a red and I save it, we get that there. On a refresh, it's going to be maintained. We can, of course, go back. We can choose those colors, and it's all going to work. And now we're basically done with the project itself. It's now time to actually push this to our live website. All right. So going back inside the Hostinger file manager, we can simply go back in the file explorer and we can upload our files, and we should be good to go. So I can press upload right here, and there we go. So now if I go back on the website, do a refresh, we have the application working live. And as we can see, because I had some saved colors from earlier, they're being displayed here. Of course, I can simply change them and I can save them, refresh, and as we can see, it's gonna work. Now, of course, remember guys that this right here is using local storage, so it's not going to be saved on the web server itself, but if you go back to the website on your own machine, they're going to be appearing here, of course, all of your saved colors. So that right there is how to create your own custom color picker using HTML, CSS, and of course, JavaScript. If today's video helped you out, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.